So before we kickstart, I'd like to share a poll with everybody, just to bring everybody in. So we'll start the first poll, which is regarding familiarity with risk management concepts. So we'll launch that. Well, we've got 44 beginner, 44 intermediate. Seems to be a couple people advanced. Most seems to be beginners and intermediate. That might just be an ego thing, though. Some of you may be more advanced than you think. All pretty split down the middle, beginner and intermediate, and then 10% advanced.
Yeah,
I think that's
mainly beginners and intermediate.
Go, Freedom.
Yeah, mainly beginners and intermediate here in that call. Okay.
Cool.
So let's see how we could help people dealing with risk management. I think it's a kind of quite complex topic with a lot of facets and the like. And yeah, I think we should give an overview about the DATAGUARD approach to that, and elaborating a little bit how we could help people with doing risk management, right?
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks, Freedom. So I can give the summary then of what we're all here for. So yeah, so this is the ISO 27001 risk management. So we're talking about strategies for tactics for success. We're going to be looking at ideas as to how to implement it, different ideas, different roadblocks, different kind of concepts, different kind of approaches you can take. We'll all discuss the general theme in this webinar today. So we'll go to the next slide. So we'll do an introduction slide. Freddie, would you like to go first as you're first on the list?
Yeah, I'm Friedhelm. I'm working as a senior information security consultant for DATAGUARD. I have quite a number of years of experience in information security in general. I'm giving also trainings on information security topics, and also working as an auditor for 3 certification bodies for a variety of ISO standards, including ISO 27001.
Fantastic, great. And I'll give an intro as well. So hi everybody, my name is Emric Etheridge. I'm the product content owner for information security. So I help put content on our platform. And as well as this, I'm also a lead auditor for ISO 27001, and I've got a technical background in other standards such as Cyber Essentials, PCI DSS, and as well as doing forensics for PCI DSS as well. So move on to the next slide, which is about DATAGUARD and who we are, how we can help. So we're a SaaS company dealing in multiple different areas we'll get to in a minute. I just want to give you some facts. So we were founded in Munich in 2017, and we help businesses to efficiently integrate compliance in processes through trust, transparency, and making things as simple as possible. To give you some figures on the screen, as you can see, we've got over 3,000 customers, 250 team members. We've got 4 main offices, and we received our Series A and B funding not that long ago. So our total funding now is around 81 million, as you can see there, which is fantastic. And of course, our core purpose is protecting the people behind the data. That's what we're all about. So just as we complete that one, we'll move on to the PIC screen. So these are the 3 kind of main areas that we work on in DATAGUARD. So the first point is privacy. We help customers up GDPR and other privacy concepts. We've got InfoSec, which of course is what our main what we're looking at today, which is ISO 27001 risk assessments, and then compliance as well. So you can see we discuss things like whistleblowing, compliance as a service as well. That's everything there, right? And I think post this one, we've got one more poll that we'll share just before we get into the proper juicy bits of the webinar. So we're talking about here, so what are the biggest challenges in risk management for ISO 27001? So this is interesting to see what people have to say on this. As Freedom said earlier on, it's a very heavy topic, it's a very complicated topic. You can really spend a lot of time in this part of ISO and in general parts of InfoSec. So good to see here what people think about the main challenges are. We can see identifying and assessing risks, assigning risk owners, and not knowing where to start. So look, so I think it's a clear winner, nearly got 100% of people voting for identifying and assessing risks. So yeah, I think that should be sufficient time. So yes, I guess we'll close the poll there. So everybody can see, yes, so we've got 57% of people said it's identifying and assessing risks is the biggest challenge, followed by 29% of assigning risk owners responsibility, and then lastly, not knowing where to start. Well, that's good. It seems that the majority of people at least know how to start, which I'll be honest, some people do find to be quite a challenge. And then we've got, yeah, those different things. But identifying and assessing risks, I mean, that's the main part of it. So yeah, I can see why that's definitely a challenge. So starting the main point of this webinar is risk management for ISO 27001. So we've got the sort of like a circle process, you know, full ring here of identifying risks, treating them, reviewing them, and monitoring them, almost similar to the kind of CIA, not CIA, the main rotation of ISO 27001 PDCA cycle. So what does it involve? Identifying and analyzing potential risks, developing strategies and addressing these risks, implementing the risk controls for these risks, and then of course monitoring them. So it's a process, it's a cycle, and you go around it. You never really end risk sort of management. It's something that you start and you maintain alongside your ISMS. So why? We do this to enhance decision making, increase the resilience, and of course minimize the impact of these risks. So that's the very high level description of what risk management is for some people that might not know. Moving into some more complicated parts of it, we've got the common roadblocks. So of course there are lots of different roadblocks and pitfalls, but we had to pick some. So the three that we've picked here are mostly regarding sort of scattered the information and siloed projects, incomplete risk assessments, inconsistent processes, and resource constraints. So when we talk about scattered information and siloed projects, we're talking about sort of lack of centralized and coordinated management. Some people are doing things in different areas, people are duplicating things, which of course isn't great, not good use of time and energy. Next thing is regarding incomplete risk assessments. So yeah, predicting and preparing for potential risks. This is not an easy thing, and with limited data and high degree of uncertainty, people aren't really sure of the process, they're not confident, and as a result they tread lightly and they need to sort of steam through it. And the next thing is resource constraints. So organizations tend to struggle to allocate necessary resources, things like time, money, personnel. And of course, yeah, if you haven't got the expertise to manage these risks effectively internally, you know, you might have to use an external company. So Freedom, have you got sort of additional things that you want to add regarding these roadblocks and pitfalls?
Yeah, I mean, I could give you a never-ending list of things which are kind of roadblocks for people and organizations to do risk management properly. It remains a big challenge. While it starts with, let's say, some also legal requirements that organizations are required to do risk management, because yeah, it is seen as a threat that maybe that some things could happen that in the end lead to the extinction even of an organization. And of course, from a legal point of view, there's a demand for that organizations are protecting themselves in a preventive manner against those things. And however, how to do that in detail, that is more or less the $1 million question. Yeah, so each organization mainly has to solve individually in the end. So there is not a common agreed way how to step by step do risk management. What, however, is quite clear is, let's say, what are the legal requirements, and what is, let's say, the way how an auditor would check that there is a risk management in place. So an auditor simply is saying, in order for me to judge whether an organization is doing risk management properly, I need to know what are the risks the organization has looked for. That's what we are calling risk identification. The next thing he asks, okay, if you have seen that are risks, what was the result then of your analysis? So what is the severity you think that these scenarios are having? And from that, what did you conclude? What did you do with that information and how you responded to that? That is the overall view that is also presented by ISO 27001. And that is also, as we'll see, the part which is being covered by the offering from DATAGUARD, how you can record those things and report those things. The hard part for most organizations, however, is how to get to that point. And our DATAGUARD philosophy is that we are not just giving you a tool where you say, okay, fill that out, and then you are compliant or the like, and then your problems are solved. We can't promise you that it works like that, but don't leave you alone with that. So we are giving you a tool where you can record that stuff, and we are giving you consultancy to fill it properly. So just in a nutshell, what is our approach to that?
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a great summary. Thanks, Fredo. I think without further ado, we will move on to the next section. We've got quite a lot to cover today. So again, it's worth echoing, if I have to repeat, it's going to be like a broken record by the end of this, but there's so many different areas to this. It's difficult to fit it into one webinar, but we'll try to do the best we can with the time we have. So regarding strategies to reduce information security risks, we've got kind of a three-step, three different areas. So you've got your informed decision making, no shortcuts to risk management, and training awareness. So informed decision making, as you can see here, is regarding accessing your management goals, choosing the most suitable approach for each risk identification, and assessing them and treating them as per the identification. Next thing is regarding no shortcuts to risk assessment. So there isn't really a shortcut. You can potentially reduce some effort, but it's more through making things efficient and optimizing rather than cutting corners. It's making sure that you conduct a thorough risk assessment, establishing these policies and procedures and mechanisms for continuous reviewing. So you need to be able to easily review these risks as well at set intervals. And then regarding training, awareness, and communication. So the whole organization needs to have a risk-aware culture. So you need to make sure that you provide training and awareness for employees, not just employees, but also vendors and other stakeholders as well, so that everybody is aware of risks that they need to be aware of, rather than it being something that maybe only senior management are aware of, as fundamentally it's those people that work with the data frequently are potentially one of the higher risks, because the surface area is high for that. So are there any other kind of high-level strategies at the moment, Freedom, that come to mind that people can do to start improving their security risk management?
Yeah, sure. Mainly risk management is about uncertainty. So if there wouldn't be uncertainty, what we need to do, then we wouldn't need to have risk management. If everything would be clear how the future would be, it would be clear also what we were reasonable to put in place, but usually we don't have that knowledge. So based on what we know, the challenge is then to sort out reasonable things which have the biggest chance of being correct, although nobody has a crystal ball. And that is overall, let's say, the framing, or that is the reason why there is not a single route how to do that properly, but there's, let's say, some cornerstones or pillars that you need, and these are also mentioned here on that slide, right?
Fantastic, great, thanks. I see a question in the chat regarding the webinar being recorded. Yeah, it will be recorded. We'll ask most of the questions at the end, but just for that quick question, yeah, it will be recorded, and you'll be able to, we'll share the information about where you can access it after you'll receive that communication. So moving on to choosing different approaches. Now, there are a variety of different approaches you can take for risk management, but the ones we're going to be looking at today are mostly asset-based and scenario-based. So they are two different approaches. They do complement each other. So the recommendation can be that you have a mix and match of different approaches. You don't just stick to one. You might do part asset, part scenario, and there's different approaches as well that we can get onto. But the DATAGUARD platform relies on a scenario based. So we have a list of scenarios, and that's our attack. But we'll go through the pros and the cons. So asset-based, what is asset-based? So it's, yeah, associating from a very high level. Of course, you can go into quite a lot of detail on here, but fundamentally it's looking at your assets specifically, and then looking at the risks associated with those. So whether that's hardware, software, firewalls, but that could also be people as well. People are assets, so you need to look at all these different things. So the pros of this are that it allows for detailed assessments, because you can look at individual assets and you can go off into details on each, go multiple levels in each asset. And you can also prioritize risks based on the criticality and identify the respective controls. So yeah, you can quite easily group different assets, and our platform allows this as well into different areas. And then from there, you could potentially save time by saying you've got 30 assets that are all the same, so they're all the same laptop, same area, same risk. Then you can kind of break it up that way. That's a pro. And then cons, which may be that it may not reflect your overall risk profile. So because the asset-based approach attacks individual risks, you need to make sure that you also look at the bigger picture after you've done that. In contrast to that, you've also got the scenario based, so rather than it being asset specifically, you look at set scenarios. So an example might be that the CCTV goes down for a day, or the server comes offline, or gets attacked by this attack method or something. So rather than looking at saying just the threats to do with that server, you look at specifically the scenarios of what could happen to that server. So yeah, and you can see here that you know, the pros of this is that it allows for proactive risk assessment and mitigation for future events. So you can have a big list of all the kind of predicted different events, and then based on those events, you can then have kind of plans as to how to resolve them, and you can connect that all nicely with things like business continuity plans, incident response as well, for all of that, as well as the policies, of course, that you then follow. But the cons of this are it's limited, or you know, it's no historical data available for hypothetical scenarios. So if you're a fresh company, it can be quite difficult to be able to generate some of these scenarios because you don't know what you don't know, maybe. So you might have to bring in other third parties, whereas larger organizations that have been around for a while, they may be able to look at historical data and generate scenarios based on what's happened in the past and how it went. But yeah, different approaches. So Freedom, would you mind expanding on a couple of those points for us? With your
sure. So maybe just as a rule of thumb, if you are a small company, or if you're just starting with risk management, I would propose that you look into the scenario-based approach first, because it requires less detail. That means it is a bit more coarse, but it might, let's say, limit the work amount to a feasible chunk, let's say. While the asset-based approach could deliver in the end a more detailed picture with a more granular, let's say, understanding of what is involved and what could the damage be. However, that requires previously kind of a modeling of your assets landscape, how they are interconnected and to which business processes they are belonging, in order to be able to answer meaningful questions to that. So a lot of work could be involved potentially with an asset-based approach, and within the asset-based approach also we could decide between, let's say, a kind of top-down strategy or a bottom-up strategy, and probably in the end you will end up with a combination of a top-down and bottom-up strategy where you try to meet somewhere in the middle. Because traditionally wise, you have a lot of repositories of, let's say, more technical assets like switches, router, firewalls, file servers, or whatsoever. And then you have more the business view of your organization where, let's say, the business processes are pronounced, and which in the end are, of course, being delivered with the help of IT assets, which are modeled in some other databases. And there is usually a lack of interconnection between those two worlds. To have a good understanding of risk management or your, let's say, risk profile or exposure, it would be necessary to bring those two views, the top level process-based view together with the bottom up view of your technical parts together in order to model really accurately risk. But that is, of course, kind of an advanced feature. In the end, what you need to report maybe for certification purposes, however, could always look the same way. So when we are just preparing the information about risk in a way that an auditor can digest it, it might look every time the same way. Like, for example, like we displayed here in our tool with DATAGUARD. But the way how you got there could be quite different, and that could be, let's say, in the end, scenario-based, asset-based, to a variety of detail levels. And it is under your discretion how to choose the most suitable method, and we, of course, can give some guidelines what we see as feasible, maybe within your context.
And that raises a really valuable point there, and especially regarding the fact that with our platform, we're a hybrid company. We have, a consultant like Freedom, for example, would, if you were assigned to be, to create your ISMS, then Freedom Hill is an example of one of our great consultants that would assist with this. And then based on his advice and consulting knowledge, you'll be able to then understand further what approach would be best for your organization. But it's worth stating that every organization, of course, we all know is different, and one step approach doesn't work for all companies. And I think that's important to state that sometimes it requires a hybrid of both. And yeah, I think earlier on, meeting in the middle can sometimes be the best approach, having a kind of multiple prong attack of risk rather than just looking at assets. So fantastic. Next we'll move on to regarding optimize the process without cutting corners. So there is no cutting corners. I think that's kind of just the full stop there. And to be fair, I'm not saying people would want to cut corners, but organizations sometimes struggle regarding resources. Maybe it's time or budget, so they feel like they need to, but this is really something that you can't and shouldn't cut corners on, because the whole point of a risk assessment is to cover everything. Otherwise, what's the point, as much as you can anyway? So you need to make sure that you're conducting your risk assessments thoroughly, and your policies and procedures not only created, but they're reviewed, make sure that they actually work. It's very easy to create policies, but it's very difficult to implement them correctly. So, and that goes alongside with risk management. So we can see from on here, we've got four other points. So to prevent cutting corners, you need to make sure that you allocate sufficient time and resources, as I was just saying a minute ago, and prioritize potential risks. So our platform assists with this as well. You can prioritize risks. And as part of your risk methodology, you may have a numbering system, which is one approach you can take. And most people often find that they look at the different levels of risk, and then they will tackle different risks in different ways. So some of the companies that I've seen, when I've helped companies build an ISMS, is that they will just attack the highest risks first, and then they will sort of snowball it and then work down to, some of them had maybe 3 or 4 very high vulnerabilities and risks. And then once they complete those, they will then go to medium, go to low, but that doesn't necessarily suit everybody. Sometimes you might need to, sprinkle and do some low, some medium, some high, but fundamentally you need to make sure that you're in line with your risk acceptance policy, so that come when you're at certification time, that you aren't accepting and allowing any risks to continue existing that are of a certain threshold above your risk acceptance. So if you say you're only going to accept low risks, and that's part of your policy, then you need to make sure that your medium and high risks are all sorted. So yeah, and finally finishing my points on here are, you need to make sure that you have your approach and you stick to your approach throughout the whole process. Ideally, if you can, if you do have to change it, that sometimes has to happen, but keeping things consistent so that stakeholders are aware of the process is really important. So you're not just sort of changing things, all the time. That can be quite confusing and jarring. Next thing is making sure that you review, monitor, and evaluate your process. So the process sometimes needs to evolve over time. It's not always perfect. Some people think that the moment they build their ISMS from the get-go, it's going to be great, and it be a lot better, especially with the assistance of our platform and our consultants. But it's an evolving process, and it will get better. And you need to make sure that you don't know how to improve it unless you review it. And of course, you've then got to track everything. So knowing that you're within time frames, you review the last time risks were looked at, the different levels they were last at, so that you can see that things are evolving rather than staying stagnant. Are there any other points, Freedom? I'm sure there are, that you want to add on these points. There's lots of different areas here.
Yeah, maybe I can summarize it just with one sentence. Somebody said, I'm not sure quite who it was, but somebody said the biggest single risk for any organization is to have a non-working risk management process.
Mm-hmm.
So that more or less emphasizes, let's say, there are a lot of things that could go wrong if you are having a methodology which is maybe producing results that are not valid, then you even could generate quite some damage with applying a risk management process. So you could be, maybe if you're in the worst case, you could be even better off just rolling the dice instead of following your process if that is ill-designed. Yeah. So there are quite a number of pitfalls, and I think this session is too short to list all of them, but I think the main message got clear. Yep, there are some problems, but we could help you to get around those.
Great, yeah, great summary. Fantastic. And then move on to the whole, risk-aware culture. So going back to what earlier on, as we were saying, that one of the points is it's crucial to have a culture of people being aware of what risks exist. So you can do it through training, communication, and awareness in the organization. So this is not just employees as well, but this is third parties, vendors, anything that connects to the organization you need to bring in, as that will be your pitfall if you forget to inform this third party of a process. So 4 points here. So actually develop a risk training program for employees. So we have a information security awareness training thing at DATAGUARD'S that people can sign up for as part of our platform, and that can help with that. We need to have some sort of training program and make sure that all employees are sticking to it. Next thing is regarding communicating your plan. So, I mean, this is kind of a mandatory thing as part of ISO 27001. Senior management need to have buy-in, they need to agree, it needs to kind of pass through them. I mean, it's really important to state that senior management are involved in the whole thing, especially if you're worried about things like phishing attacks and that kind of thing. Of course, senior management need to be involved just as much as anybody, if not potentially more, because they've got access to potentially more sensitive information. And so that's really important. They also need to make sure that they agree and have buy-in with the process, so that more resources, more funding can be put aside, so that they understand the value and why it's really important. This is even more crucial for larger organizations. Thirdly is regarding identifying risk owners. So of course, this is a very sort of, the stats here are, rounded, but you can see that in terms of who needs to be involved in what, we tend to find that IT and IT management are involved in sort of 60%, HR 20%, leadership 20%. But leadership fundamentally needs to look at everything. This is just their total contribution, because leadership probably aren't actually implementing some of these technical controls, but they will need to have an overview of them once they're completed and they've been tested. And then lastly, document your risk management plan and responsibilities. So this is something that, of course, our platform can help with, and it's making everybody aware of who is responsible for what in terms of risk management, not just from a group perspective, but also potentially from an individual as well. So depending on the size of your organization, of course, sometimes you might have whole teams dedicated to these. But yeah, there needs to be somebody, so there's a particular technical control, you need to know that X person or X group is going to be responsible for making sure that not only it's been implemented correctly, and that it's been tested as well. So yeah, adding to creating a risk-aware culture, Freedom, are there any other aspects that you feel are important here?
Yeah, I think the term risk is used by everybody. But while everybody's using that, it is not guaranteed that everybody has the same understanding what is risk for him. So some people are restricting the understanding of risk to a probability that something could happen, while maybe the definition of some other people is different. Both are using the term risk, but don't assume because somebody is just talking about risk that they all have the same understanding what is involved there. So therefore, it's important that within an organization you are developing a common view on what do we mean if we are talking about risk management, what is really the core at it, because there are different perceptions, and depending on the context, the interpretation could be quite different, and it is necessary for an organization to get here kind of a common knowledge or a common understanding of what it means in their context. That's point number one. Point number two, regarding risk culture, why it is important. If you are thinking about the aviation industry, yeah, that is one of the industries where, let's say, they have the 5 nines in quality, or they are, if you are talking about, let's say, death in transport with airplanes, yeah, they got to an incredibly low number of incidents with fatal consequences. And the reason why they got there was that there is a quite open risk culture in aviation. So it means, like, if somewhere is an airplane crash, it is being looked at in depth, it is analyzed by experts, the root cause is being tracked, and measures are being set up to eliminate that. That, of course, wouldn't work if you are just keeping everything under the carpet. Yeah. So therefore, in order, if you want to reduce risks in a meaningful manner, yes, some sort of transparency and openness is more than helpful. And that is also provided by culture.
Great. I think that summarizes it perfectly. Yeah. And it's even making me think about it. It just makes sense. Yeah. Because when the risks are deemed as kind of, detrimental to people's health, then of course, it's more in the forefront of their brain, isn't it? So therefore, yeah, that makes sense. And I've got some questions actually as well. I'll read them out for them. You may be able to assist. So I think the first question, of course, there are some questions at the end as well, which we'll go through if need be. I thought these ones are quite important to discuss now as they're on topic with this. And it's regarding, so how do you monitor and measure risks if no incidents have occurred? So what, if there's no historical, what can you do? And I'm guessing this is from a scenario-based approach.
How to measure risks? Usually you have some things which we are calling KRIs, key risk indicators. And key risk indicators are coming in a variety of flavors. There are leading indicators and there are lagging indicators. Leading risk indicators are giving you an early warning that some risk was going up and that you might expect that the likelihood of seeing some damage in the future also will be higher, while the lagging indicators are giving you evidence that the risk already has materialized. So that is kind of the, let's say, theoretical foundation where I'm coming from. So what you need to find out within your context is then, when you want to measure risk, is what gives you an indication that the likelihood of damage will go up in reality. Easy example, for example, if you observe that the fluctuation within your personnel is going up, you have more inexperienced staff available, they tend to make more errors, and because of that, there might be some more incidents. So first, you see people are moving, leaving your organization, getting into your organization more frequently. That is what you first observe. And then after a while, you observe that maybe incidents are going up. So in that way, the fluctuation of personnel could be a leading indicator for change risk. Another lagging indicator for changed risk is that you are just counting, let's say, the damages done by incidents or the impacts that occurred, when then you see that you needed to spend more efforts in order for, let's say, restoration work or restore work, or dealing just with corrections and corrective actions in order just to resume your usual work. That's the overall approach how to measure risk. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, thanks for that answer. All right, I guess we'll move on to the next slide before we continue with some questions. So let's go through best practice bulletproof risk management. So I think it just kind of highlights other areas here, and that's regarding making sure you set aside time, you define clear roles and responsibilities, and that you follow a structured approach. So you can do many things, but if you think from a very high basic level, if you can nail these at a minimum, then you should be on a good stead there. So that brings you on to the 3-step approach. This is how DATAGUARD handle it. From a super high level, this is how we kind of tackle it. So we look at we assess the risks that you've got. Of course, we treat them, and of course, we review residual risks. I think this is the basic approach. And I think you think, well, obviously this is obvious, Emmerich. This is how everybody does it. But I think it's good to get the core fundamental, points and really drive that home with people, that they understand that you need to follow these 3 steps in order, and that some people they tend to kind of skip, one step. Maybe they just sort of, they just assume risks exist rather than kind of assessing them and where they are, and then sort of whacking it in. But every step needs to be reviewed. And the way in which our DATAGUARD platform work, and we'll share that in a second, is that it really cuts time. So some of our customers have seen that by following this kind of basic approach, with the assistance of a consultant to maybe navigate through the complexities, they're able to save around 50% of their time in actual getting their not only their risks assessed, but also helping with the implementation using, for example, ISO 27002 with our consultant to implement these controls for technical controls. Yeah, just worth stating for everybody here. And then that moves on to these 3 steps. So moving on regarding identifying and assessing risks. So you instantly save time with a pre-populated list of risks. So we've got some, for people, everyone in the message was that some people aren't sure where to start. So you've got some risks that people can start looking at to get the ball rolling in that way. So that you go, right, well, I've got an idea as to what these risks are. And these risks are populated based on what we've seen in customers in the past. So you can then build on this list, and you can add an unlimited custom amount of risks on top of this. So we've got a selection of default risks, which we imagine a majority of people to have. Of course, if they're not applicable to you, you can just delete them. But then you can then add as many risks, of course, to that list as you like, and it's all centrally managed, and everybody can see it. You can, assign roles and responsibilities for that. So the next thing is regarding treating these risks. So once you've discovered what risks you've got, you then need to treat these risks. So we've got you choose your treatment option. So we have the options of accepting, avoiding, transferring, or mitigating these risks. So mitigating is basically applying technical controls. And depending on what option you tick, we'll then choose, your process going forward. But let's say you were to mitigate a risk, it will then give you a selection of relevant controls associated with these risks. If it's a custom control set, then a consultant will be there to advise on these. But if they're default, then of course we've got we've already reviewed these, so we know what controls should be applied. You then look into applying these controls. You choose which ones you definitely want to implement. And this then goes in like your documents, like your statement of applicability, so that you know what controls you've got and how to manage them. On top of this, you've got your targeted residual risk. So you've got your starting risk of the risk value. So you may say to start with, the risk was very high in terms of the occurrence, and also if it was to happen, the damage would be very high. And then you multiply those together to get your overall risk score. And for here, you can then you then estimate with the assistance of your consultant, or if it's default, then it's already pre-targeted based on the controls that you choose, to then reduce that risk as well. So once everybody's in agreement with what controls, and there is also a description there as well to assist more information, so you're fully aligned with what each risk control is, how it's going to help the required input, and then click approve treatment plan. And then that then gets added to your big list of different your plan as to how you're going to treat risks. And move on to that now. And then this is where you've then got your residual risks and you review these. So once you've clicked review on that risk, you will then see, right, okay, what was the original risk? What's the options that we've chosen? What are the different controls? So for example, this one, it had 6 controls that need to be implemented. And it then says that once these controls have been implemented, we expect that the risk should now be medium. If everybody is in agreement with this, and you get the relevant stakeholders, so you have your risk owner here. So for example, head of operations is this individual. They need to make sure that they're fully aware of all the different processes here, so they understand the original risk, the treatment options and everything. And you could do this in a meeting and review that and log that ready for your audit. Once that has all been done and everybody is aligned, you'll then have the ability to then click mark as reviewed, and then everything is then logged in our platform, ready for easy consumption. So I think that's our 3-step approach to handling risk on our platform. And the next step is regarding, well, why DATAGUARD? Yes, Frida.
Just let me do a quick remark, because there also was a question which was raised regarding the topics you covered. The question was about how much time does it take in order to put together a risk register. We didn't use the term risk register here in our presentation. We always talked about the risk treatment plan. And in fact, the DATAGUARD tool, let's say, speeds up maybe the putting together a risk treatment plan. And essentially, a risk treatment plan has a huge overlap with what in literature sometimes is referred to as a risk register. It is just the summary of all the risks you have looked at and your decisions about how to deal with them. That's a risk risk register, and in that regard also the risk treatment plan answer that question. So for the moment we could just treat it synonymously. How long does it take until we have that risk treatment plan or risk register? So how long does it take to build a house? The same sort of question. It depends on the complexity of your business and for which purpose you want to compile that plan. So if you, or it also depends on how sure do you want to be that you didn't miss any essential risk. So question about completeness of that plan. Depending what your requirements are here, you have a kind of a range how long it lasts. So if you want to do that only just for compliance purposes, because you will have been told you need a risk treatment plan, but otherwise you think you are already, let's say, well settled, then it might be an exercise of, let's say, 1 hour or so. But if you have, let's say, other requirements here, or you want to have a degree of certainty that it is complete and truly reflects your situation and the like, maybe experts have to be consulted. You have to draw, let's say, some checklists from various sources in addition and do cross checks and the like. It always could be kind of more laborious process. So the quick answer would be it depends, but just to give you an idea on what it depends and what's involved here.
Yeah, great. Yeah, great summary. It's a really difficult question to answer, isn't it? Because it's not everybody's.
Yeah, at least in a general fashion, it's always a kind of a challenge. Yeah, because there is no one size fit all.
Great. I think there are. I think there are some questions. I'm going to just finish this slide and then we'll move on to the official question asking, and then we can tackle all in one go for people that so they'll freshen people's brains. So yeah, so why DATAGUARD as well? So just some 3 little points here. Wanted to emphasize that we currently have 100% pass rate on our stage 2 audits for ISO 27001 for people that have used the platform and with assistance of our consultants as well. Next step is that it's simplified, so it's currently used by 3,000 customers, and we like to think that we can bring clarity and really reduce time and also costing as well, because everything's in one bundle. So I think that's summarized there. I think that then brings us to our last slide, where we can literally just discuss questions. So which is fantastic, because I'm sure we've got quite a few questions in the chat, which is great. Are you good to answer these questions? I can also jump in whenever you like.
Yeah, could you just read the question as it appears to you, and then I'll jump in?
Yes, no problem at all. So let me just go back. Right, let me just find it. Yeah, so it states that it says ISO 27001 requirements. The platform is quite best in class, which is great. Thanks to hear that. Is there a chance to include an ISO 9001 risk assessment for companies like us who have an IMS, which include all ISO approaches? Last but not least, also regarding ISO 14001, could that be handled inside this tool as well? I mean, I'm happy to answer this if you're feeling, but I know it's yourself.
Quite a bunch of questions all together. So, yeah, sure. So where should I start? The DATAGUARD solution is focused on information security. We are allowing you to record risk as mandated by 27001 in terms of likelihood, impact, towards CIA-related things. And that is also how the stuff is prepared. Risks regarding quality are maybe different, that we are here not talking about CIA necessarily wise, but we are talking about customer satisfaction, or to which extent we are fulfilling some sort of specification. And failing that specification, or failing, let's say, customer, failing the expectations of customers, that also is a risk for an organization. but it usually needs to be described in other terms. And of course, the measures you are taking also are different. So I would say, from what we are currently offering in the platform, we are focused on information security. And for sure, if you like, you could store even some other things which are not related to information security with the help of that tool, but I wouldn't strictly recommend that.
Yeah, I think I echo that as well. The functionality is there, but you may find that from a compliance perspective, it wasn't designed with that compliance in mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's worth stating. So I think we've got some questions as well, but before we get to these last few questions, I've got the last poll I'd like to share with everybody as well, and this is just regarding the actual webinar itself. So it would be fantastic if you all could let us know what they'd like to do post this poll, and then we can then get on to the last set of questions from that one. Yeah, 50% of people voted. We'll wait another sort of 30 seconds. So a lot of people like to really explore the topic, which is fair enough. It's an interesting topic, risk management. We've got some people that are asking regarding wanting to speak to one of our experts, and we can certainly, if you let us know, if you'd like to speak to one of our experts, we can point you in the right direction of people that you can talk to. But I believe that will be, if enough time, so wait a couple, 10 more seconds, we'll do a minute. Fantastic. Great. So for that, those people that said they want to speak to an expert, we can be in touch. If you let us know, who you are, then we can follow up with that. And regarding people that say they want to explore the topic, then I guess yeah, that's why we're here, and that's what we can assist with in a DATAGUARD'S. So if you have any questions, or you want to start getting involved in risk management as part of an ISMS implementation, then of course DATAGUARD are here to help. So I think the next thing is we've got some more questions. Which we'll get here. So I want to make sure I don't miss any out. Let me have a look. Next one is, when arriving at original or inherent risk levels, where do you document the existing controls that are in place with the asset? So I think I can answer this one if you like, because it's more of a platform-based question. So I think it's, yeah, so our platform is a, we don't necessarily take an asset-based approach. We can do that with our consultants, but the platform is currently not designed that way. But in terms of the original inherent risk level, yeah, that's all in the first step. So you state there the current risk level, and then there is a section in there where you can document. There's like a little text box in there which we can, if you're interested more in this, of course, follow up with us and we can show you in a demo. But fundamentally, there's a couple boxes in there for you to type in existing controls that you've already got, and also it's just a kind of a text box that's open for you to write whatever you like, and then it's logged. So you can say we've got X controls, these are implemented here, here's the challenges, all in there, and then that's captured, ready so that your consultant can then advise on next steps on that one. So I hope it answers your question. If not, then feel free to write another question in the chat. And the next one is,
I could take on the next one.
Yeah,
the question was, how do you ensure that every possible risk is considered and categorized, especially if you're a startup entity?
Great
Short
question.
answer, though, there is no way to ensure that 100%. It just depends on how, let's say, how much scrutiny you are applying and how much resources and expert knowledge you put into that to get to a certain level of confidence that you have missed anything. But another good short answer to that question probably is, if you want to make it sure, you have to combine a variety of methods. Just basing it on, let's say, some catalogs you find somewhere, maybe on the internet or from authorities, is not good enough. Just asking experts is not good enough. And also, what you should do is being clear about your assumptions, whether you're thinking that some things are so remote that you not need to spend any further time on thinking about that, okay, that also should be documented. And best of all, you are combining expert knowledge with some checklists from trustworthy sources, and also you are documenting your assumptions. And that way, if you're combining these three things, which is also being known as the ABC methodology of risk identification, then you have a good chance to get close to where you want to get.
Yeah. Yes, very difficult question, yeah, because you can't ensure anything in information security. There is no guarantees, is there?
Yeah, exactly. But we can do the best we can, and the best we can currently, what is sort of best practice, yeah, we can combine a variety of methods and thereby making sure that we get close to what we want.
Great summary, thanks, Phil. And we've got one more question, which I guess either of us can answer. You might want to, if you like, Freedom, I'll read it out. So it says, do you have any recommendations for policy writing which makes all content clear and concise for all employees? So we're on about sort of a policy-based question here.
Yeah, I think, Emmerich, do you want to explain a little bit what the platform is offering in that regard?
Yeah, sure thing. So, yeah, so at DataGuard, we've got lots of policies that have already been pre-written that can assist with this, and some policies can also potentially be automated at some point in the process. So what you do is we've got a list of all the different policies that we expect in one place. It's on our platform where you and your consultant can log on, download copies of these policies, and then look at them and make adjustments with your consultant to make them compliant. They're designed to be worded in a way that means they're understandable for basically, depending on the kind of policy. So if it's what you call like an above desk policy, so lots of people are going to sit in the organization at all levels, then it will be worded in a way that it makes easy to understand. And then if it's a more technical control policy, it still will be made easy to understand and concise. But it's also worth noting that not all employees should be seeing all policies, or ideally not, depending on the size of the organization, but they will be written so that the relevant parties who will be reading them will be able to understand them. So yeah, I think that's a general kind of rule of thumb, that it's, you know, the whole KISS, you know, keep it simple, stupid sort of approach is really important as much as you can, because information security, specifically ISO 27001 as well, it's a very complicated topic. You can spend so much time, infinite time, you know, exploring different revenues, and it also comes down to policies as well. And it also depends on the size of your organization. So if you're a very small company, there's maybe, you know, you're a micro company or a small company, then the policy you write is likely, if not probably should be, different to a corporate where there are thousands of employees or even potentially millions, because the amount of people that are going to see it, it just needs to be built differently. So, but if you're speaking from a small perspective, you know, a company that's relatively small, then yeah, you could quite easily be able to keep things concise, and our platform can help with that. And if you've got any, you know, issues or qualms, you go, oh, this policy doesn't really make sense, this is what our consultants are here to help with. So let's say you generate a policy on there and you go, oh, I don't really have to fill this in, it's not that, you know, I need advice on, you know, how do I do a business continuity policy or anything like that, then our consultants are on hand to then assist and point in the right direction, run through the policy with you, make sure you're you know, aware of what to do, fill it in with them as much as you can. You go away with your team, because a lot of these things take time, and then come back to us and we can kind of mark your homework, as you say, to make sure that if you've, you know, done everything correctly, and then we can navigate you if for some reason you're not sure of any parts of it. That's great. I think that covers that. Fantastic. Let's see if there's any other questions. Just going through the list now. Yeah, so I've got a question here. Somebody states that, you know, they thank you for. Here we've got a quote. Yeah, so it's nice. Yes, it says that they you know, they like the platform. Thanks for your clear picture that you brought. As an already user of our tool, yeah, it's a great tool. That's kind of you to say. Thank you very much. Also, the policy you handed over has saved us time during our audit. Well, that's good. That's kind of the plan, and that's what we'll continue to do. And especially as we move into newer versions of ISO as well, of course, we'll be up to date with that. So watch this space for changes to the standard. So I believe that is all of our questions. Yes, that is. If anybody feels that they've got any other questions, then let us know. And we can always get back to you after as well. So if there's any questions that you think, oh, I wish I'd asked this, then please feel free to reach out to us as well. For anybody as well, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. I'm on that platform. And if you've got any questions and you want to know where to go, of course, I can also point you in the right direction there as well. So I think that's, are there any other points you want to raise, Freedom? Is that everything before we kind of do the outro?
I think we have covered it in just the available time as much as we could, and yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it's definitely a challenge to summarize such a vast topic in, you know, a sort of 45-50 hour slot. It's really something that, you know, as much as you want to go into more detail, it really is, you know, it's one of the most complicated parts of developing an ISMS. But yeah, this is what DataGuard are here to help. We can make that whole process a lot more clear for you and navigate you through those complex sort of waters that is risk management. And I believe that's everything. So if there are no more questions, thank you everybody that's joined our webinar today. I hope you have a great rest of your week, great weekend. And yeah, and it's the nice and sun is shining here, so I hope it is the same where everybody else is. So yeah, thank you again and have a great rest of your day.